Let's get started. First of all, welcome you to the meeting and a few housekeeping and matters. We have interpretation service. Channel 1 is the floor. Channel 2, Chinese. Channel 3, English. Channel 2, English, and Channel 3, 普通话. You are not protected by the electrical powers and privileges ordinance, and the same applies to your written submission. And please note that in front of you there is a note for members of the public attending meetings in conference rooms or observing in public gallery in the electrical. First, we have Ms. Lau Wei Hang from the HKCSS. Thank you. I'd like to reflect to you the poverty situation among young elderly. We submitted our submission to you earlier. Now, from 2011 to 2016, the amount of young poor elderly has doubled, and the poverty rate is over 34%. And I think this is a matter of concern. Although the government has introduced a number of measures to help young elderly persons, I'd like to share with you a case who faces similar problems of their counterpart. I'm talking about a 7-year-old Nepali elderly couple living with their family. They do not have any income or savings. They rely on some income from their family members, and the situation is like 8% of their counterparts. They haven't applied for any assistance because they are not aware of it. They have lived in Hong Kong for more than 10 years, but they don't even know how to apply for an ID card. Just like their elderly counterparts, they are frequently sick. They don't know how to apply for the health vouchers. And many of the EM elderly we come across have never heard of the voucher scheme. We have introduced the scheme to them. They were happy to hear that, but the application was very difficult because for Social Security that has to be deposited into their bank accounts, but many of them, they don't have any bank accounts, and their family members are not willing to open one for them. So after a lot of assistance from the SW, finally they can have an account. And many elderly persons will not apply for Social Security after they learned that banks would not have allowed them to open an account there. So I think we should consolidate all relevant information into an information kit, and it can be uploaded to the relevant website so that the elderly can have access to the information they need. And then we should have a checklist for equal opportunities. When EM elderly persons so request, interpretation service should be provided, and then the relevant officers should have greater sensitivity, and they should address the cultural needs of EM elderly persons. And you should also analyze the poverty situation among the young elderly, monitor their situation, and you should conduct a study of this group to understand their needs, to see whether a new mode of service should be developed for them. We are very concerned about the aging population, and EMs are also aging. We should not just look at their poverty situation. We should also be prepared for the challenges associated with the aging in the future.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nibra Yunus, currently a secondary 4 student. Poverty is related to different aspects, but today specifically I'm here to talk about the education aspect. We all know that education is crucial to alleviation of intergenerational poverty, and also that Chinese proficiency is the key to ethnic minorities' integration to society. The Education Bureau has implemented different Chinese curriculums in order to help us ethnic minority students to lessen our burden in Chinese learning areas. For example, the General Certificate of Secondary Education of Chinese Language, which is also known as GCSE. Taking myself as an example, I was born in Hong Kong and I studied in Chinese mainstream kindergarten. Now I'm studying in secondary school, and I learn at easier Chinese level. I have tried local Chinese Form 4 test papers, and to be honest, I wouldn't say that it was so hard, but I was able to understand the content. If more effort is put on us, then I'm sure that we'll be able to learn Chinese till the level which is required in this society. Many universities in Hong Kong only require grade C, which is a pass in GCSE examinations, which seems to be a pretty easy requirement. However, I think that the government does not understand that getting into university does not mean that we'll be able to find a job in the future. Because let's take an example. Even if an ethnic minority student gets into university with good results, however, it would be hard for him or her to find a job afterwards, because in real life situations, employers do not look at our qualifications, but instead they'll judge us whether we are able to speak Chinese fluently and whether we are able to use Chinese in daily communications. I really want the government to do something which helps ethnic minority students on the long run. There are many programs outside which help us ethnic minority students to build a better Chinese foundation, but I have seen that there is a lack of promotion on these programs, and I would really suggest the government to promote these programs more, so that us ethnic minority students, it would be easy for us to integrate to the society with a better Chinese level. To conclude this, I would request the government to spend the money wisely on the education sector and help us non-Chinese speaking students to learn Chinese till the level which is needed in the society, instead of only aiming at providing us an easier way for getting into universities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jonas. We now invite Mr. Abbas Arif, please.
多謝主席。咁我係 Arif Abbas， 中文名就係簡拍。
I am Abbas Arif. I'm a Hong Kong resident. I've lived here for more than 20 years, and I face the same old problems. I don't know what the government has done. It has spent a lot of money. Where has the money gone? I spent more than a decade to obtain a degree. I've got a daughter, and she faces problems in KG. The teachers and principals say that this KG is for local people. Does your daughter or your wife know Chinese? The problem is, if you do not admit me, how can I learn Chinese? So my daughter can only play with EM kids, and even after they've received education, she has no exposure to Chinese. So can the administration monitor KGs? I know you have done something, but that's not enough. We want KGs to accept our children. And then there's the problem of discrimination. There's indirect discrimination. Now, if you want to open a bank account, if you don't have regular income, you're not allowed to do so. If you don't have a bank account, you cannot receive your income or salary. And where can our kids learn Chinese? In schools? Can there be more culture workshop for schools, so that the schools understand that EMs may be from a different culture, but there is nothing wrong with them, so that students would not discriminate against EM schoolmates. And when these people graduate, they may not have so many prejudices against working or hiring EMs, so that we'll have a happier society and more inclusive society. I think local people should do their part. The government is a big employer. It employs so many people. Therefore, employ people whose English is not good enough. So EMs may want to communicate them with English, but the other party is not confident enough. So you must find interpreters in hospitals to help EMs, because many people just don't know what service is available. So this is a vicious cycle. They cannot receive good education. They cannot find quality jobs. They cannot have high income. So unless the kid is an elite or the mother has put in a lot of effort, but still they are the minority. So the government should do more.
We now invite Panka, please.
Hello, good afternoon, respected chairman and respected panel. I'm Kazi. I'm currently studying in the Caritas Institute of Higher Education and also doing a placement in Unison. So yeah, I would like to point out some few points that about the ethnic minority. The people are not aware of the policies, the welfare policies, and then the second is that the policies should be disseminated, like properly, and then most of the poverty report showed that the nearly 80% of the community is not aware what's going on, and there's a very the need in the ethnic minority for the interpretation as well. The interpretation services on the hospital is not working, that we all know, and then probably we might think about what we're going to do and then probably work on it. My suggestion probably maybe if we can have on-site interpretation services would be better. And another thing, the last point that I would like to make is that about the provision of the free lunch at the schools for the primary students. As we all know, the Committee of the Poverty has just recently in 2014 made that 51.1% is the Pakistani is the highest poverty level. But what it's doing is that in the lunch scheme has they have made any concern about giving the halal food. So they are the highest rate, the Pakistani communities, but they are already left out, but not giving them halal food. So I don't know how does this work, but I think it would be better if we make a consideration, if we are trying to help this community, then of course the consideration for the halal food should be made as well. So my suggestions last, so I think the HAD can also do more outreach services in the community so that, more work on the grassroots and try to find the people, look for the community leaders and then try to have some focus group or concerned groups so that we can have more pre-talks than before making any policies that we can try to do that. And then, of course, the lastly is like we need to do a lot of publicity services should be done, and because to initiate the social security welfare system. So more outreach services that I would like to recommend to the government, and then I think HAD can hire some ethnic minorities or maybe have a really concerned group so that they can go to the community and do more groundwork in the grassroots. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Panka. 跟住我請陳思琪小姐，唔該。
Ms. Chen CK, I speak for myself. I've been quite concerned on the rights of ethnic minorities, and today I would like to speak more on the qualifications framework. I see that government is, let's say for the ethnic minorities, they have earned a degree at their home country, and so return to Hong Kong. They could look for their corresponding qualifications and then to be accredited. However, we ask a lot of the young EMs, and most of them are not aware of the recognition system, and they don't even aware that they could have such services, so that they could get the accreditation to look for a job. A lot of employers are also not quite familiar with the acceptance of qualification issues. Even if they're holding this certificate, if the employers have no idea that is equivalent to Hong Kong qualifications, maybe they could promote this among the employers. And in terms of the subsidy scheme on qualifications appraisal, I looked for the relevant information. I found that this only have the Chinese version. So for the EMs who would like to apply, so isn't it more appropriate to provide the information in English so they can look for themselves? That even the application forms are only available in Chinese, so maybe they would have version in other languages as well. Thank you, Mr. Ha Ho Pen. and on the poverty alleviation for EMs, education is inevitably come to the picture because education is the best solution for promoting upward mobility, especially post-secondary education. I know that the government do have the measure in place. For example, more opportunity for post-secondary. So, for example, when admitting non-Chinese students, discretion or other alternative admission criteria is accepted. However, when they admit in the university, because they do still face substantial language barrier. First of all, with the mark system, so even the university would accept GCSE Chinese results. However, the university itself only has a minimum requirement. However, there's no yet to have a conversion mechanism to produce the result implied. Maybe the GCE result as to is that maybe on the GCE A levels I get a B. However, what is the local equivalent? So therefore, when the EMs apply for university, they have no idea how to convert their results to local examinations because they have no idea. I'm not sure if anyone in the administration now accept it. If they don't know what their score would be, it's hard for them to choose subjects. A lot of the institution would handle applications on admissions on a state-by-case basis. So they would only consider your application depending on your results. This is a rather ambiguous attitude because so for individual circumstances they attempt a uniform yardstick or guidelines. So if they are rejected, and so the EMs wouldn't know why they rejected. So the institutions would need to have a guidelines for the accepting the EM student in such phrases like transparency, but even though it has flexibility. So maybe the institution could be offered guidelines and provide inconsistency when admitting EM students. And on the interview requirement is not clear either. So for the schools to be instructed in English, however, require interview in Chinese. However, the EM students are only aware of that on the day of the interview. So maybe they're not fluent in Chinese and yet you require them interview in Chinese. That would really reduce the chances of the courses they would otherwise have the scores to get in. This is a rather practical situation faced by the EMs every day. And on all the alternative Chinese qualifications, this is a rather short-term measure, and to encourage the Chinese to take the GCSE exams to Chinese level, they're rather too simple. Even if they get A star, they will not help their daily interactions and communications. So the more practical would be instead of a framework, so that would actually would have a full Chinese as a second language curriculum in the primary and secondary school for quality learning. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Leong Lok Tin. I'm a university grad student. However, I do care a lot about the ethnic minorities on the poverty question. It was inseparable from education. So we talk about knowledge having the power to change lives. However, for the EMs, does it hold true for them? For all the previous deputation or even the presentation just now mentioned kept the importance of learning Chinese, but now the current education system is not able to help EMs to learn Chinese. And I'd like to mention about the problem of learning Chinese and the tutorial lessons by the EM. On 2014, it rolled out the Chinese second language learning framework. However, for the level support and the Chinese proficiency, there's actually no improvement because such framework had no curriculum, no guidelines, and no specific directions, just a framework. How does it work? It's tell the teachers that the first step will be teaching simple phrases, sentences, followed by paragraphs. So what are you actually teaching? The teachers have no idea. The teachers have no idea how to teach this EM's Chinese because there's the lack of content. So they couldn't understand the mainstream Chinese classes. So they're not able to understand what's going on in those Chinese medium classes. So the first one they turn is help to go to parents. However, lots of the parents don't know Chinese themselves, or maybe their English proficiency are rather low, thus unable to help the children in learning. And now they'll ask for tutorial lessons. So actually to pay for classes held by universities or school basis. I see Mr. Leung Kwok City on November 2012 to ask the EDB, how do you handle the quality issues with these tutorial classes? The EDB replied with that we have regular surveillance and asking them to submit report and questionnaire to be complete by students. And the students actually told us that they have huge class of 30-something people. They're actually not teaching what's in the textbook, rather opening a PowerPoint and telling them the answers and to complete them, and then the teachers wouldn't care less. So so there's no way to really monitor the performances. So on the shortcomings of the framework, and you did really give more resources to school, and now that you didn't resolve any short-term issues, let alone the overall objectives. So if no proper planning, so there's no use putting in enormous amount of money. So we should start with education. So more than a framework, we require a true curriculum with teaching materials and content and letting the teachers know how to teach them. However, the top priority will be to monitor the quality of tutorial classes to provide families some previous support. I'm not putting pressure on the teaching staff or the NGOs. However, this open review report, can the EDB provide them to us, or whether the professional training to be provided to teachers so that they can teach EM students. Mr. Mark Longway. And speaking of poverty alleviation, as a university student, I'm most concerned about my job upon graduation. Besides education, the Chinese education, more importantly, whether the Chinese you learned will be sufficient for you to communicate at the workplace. The administration should care more about the Chinese learning in schools. The adult Chinese training is important as well. Even though a lot of occupations doesn't require Chinese, however, in reality, these occupations disqualify applicants with low Chinese proficiency. From what I see for myself, let's say he was and those for elite law graduates that would find a job in local firms, and for cleaners because they don't know how to read their labels on detergents, so he was disqualified from the cleaner's position. So of course the government is impossible to totally eradicate this situation, but now the Chinese proficiency is actually the big obstacle toward outward mobility of EMs. Even the local born EMs know how to read or speak or listen to Chinese. However, their reading ability still lag behind. And actually, some companies would formulate or have language classes for the employees to take part, and some companies would actually offer training for ERB Chinese classes during working hours to learn the Chinese they need. And however, these companies are rather in this very much in a minority. So if the others are not able to enhance the Chinese skills, how could they lift themselves and promote themselves in the workplace? If the government would like to address the poverty situation, to stop pushing the responsibility to learn Chinese back to the minorities. Currently, a lot of adult language courses to EM, besides offered by ERB, the self-support center for EMs by HAD or other NGOs will actually offer a lot of classes for adults to take part. However, among different organizations, there's like coordination and lack of a uniform level of competency. Even if they would like to join, they have no idea which classes to sign up. Maybe the government should consider, through the Labor Department, to launch some measures to encourage the companies to let the employees to train to work the Chinese during working hours. so that they could maintain their competitiveness in their workplace in order to address their poverty situation. Thank you, Civic Party, Mr. Yu.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a member of the Yau Chimong District Council and also a member of the Working Group for Ethnic Minorities. Well, they are according to 2015 situation report by the administration, Pakistanis have a much higher poverty rate among all EM groups. So we should have a uniformed multicultural policy to help EMs at their start of life, because they have little chance of upward mobility. There is no way they can get out of poverty. There are various aspects of their quality of life will be affected, and this will only cause their problem to get worse. Education is not helping them. In learning Chinese, EMs are not given sufficient support. As a result, the Chinese standards of EMs are much lower than their counterparts, so they cannot attain the minimum requirements. Most schools use Chinese as the medium of education, and sometimes EM students have to work after school to help their families, so they are victims of our education system. So we should have a guideline or curriculum for learning of Chinese as a second language, and we should have a Chinese curriculum to help them to learn more effectively. And they also face difficulties in getting employment when their Chinese standard is poor. Employers tend not to employ them. The information available at the employment centers of LD is provided in Chinese, and many EMs depend on their own social networks to get jobs, and many EM women will not join the workforce, so their family income is limited. We urge the LD to provide more resources and manpower to provide a multicultural environment. We also urge the administration to provide more funding to support NGOs so that EM women could be employed on a part-time basis. Lastly, they face a housing problem. 77.9% of EMs live in private accommodation, most of them on rented premises. So in the property markets, many landlords refuse to rent their flats to EMs, so the choice is limited. And when they apply for public housing, again, they face language difficulties. Very often they miss the opportunities of PRH offer. So we urge the administration to consider our suggestions so that EMs can have equal opportunities for upward mobility. Thank you.
Tafazul, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abir. I have worked in an NGO before and now I stay home to take care of my daughter. Sir, in Hong Kong, we have to address two groups of ethnic minorities who are new arrivals, and second ones are born and raised in here. I came to Hong Kong 10 years back, so yes, I do not speak a local language, but the kids, youths I meet in schools and universities are as fluent as locals. But unfortunately, they are still not progressing as they should be because the hurdle of reading and writing Cantonese still stands. No matter how fluent they are and how hard they try, they are still not being able to compete with locals in different fields. The question is why? In school, they are taught very easy level Cantonese in which they can easily learn conversations but only few words in reading and writing. A new arrival is also able to pass GCSE level in 2 years' time, and the same curriculum is taught to kids who are studying here since kindergarten, which is unfair and unjustified for these students who could easily get better in Cantonese with extra support of schools. These fluent spoken Cantonese coming from ethnic minorities is not very helpful for them if they cannot read and write, because these are the requirements of the employer. Language classes from NGOs or other institutions are not recognized by employer and their quality is really low. There should be a standard course which also be accepted by employer. It should have benchmark among the current Chinese courses provided by ERB, HAD, support centers, NGOs, institutions, etc. Employers should also provide on-job language course training with recognition to create a win-win situation for both parties. For those who are already fluent in spoken and listening should be given more value and recognition for many jobs. My other fellow members have spoken or will speak about flaws in education system and employment, so I don't have to repeat that. All I want is to make a humble request to please take us into deep consideration, as we, our kids and our future generation, are as much as future of Hong Kong as local Chinese. Sir, on the other note, my daughter going to kindergarten this year has not got an admission in Chinese mainstream kindergarten. I have applied in 2 best kindergartens among my area, but my observation is they do not accept any ethnic minorities. The teacher did not let me in. My question to EDB is, why? If I can speak enough English to communicate with anybody, why teachers cannot cater my need? I do not speak Chinese, that's true, but I speak enough English to talk to the teacher. And my kid, if she goes to Chinese kindergarten, she will learn more Chinese. But now she's going to be in English kindergarten. So who is responsible for that? Because I applied in 2 best kindergartens in my district. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Devasu. Could we now invite Mrs. Shabana Akbar, please?
My father started living in Hong Kong in 1965. I came to Hong Kong when I was a primary kid. To tell you a little bit about my background, I grew up in Hong Kong, and there were a few designated schools to receive us. I graduated from one of them. Back then, we were not taught Chinese. I learned Chinese from watching TV and using my own efforts. And then, after I left school, I understood that it's important that I know Chinese because it is already after the handover. I want to further my studies. I want to work, and Chinese is needed. I face a lot of limitation. I feel that I've been shortchanged because I don't know Chinese. Although I am quite fluent in Cantonese, I have a lot of communication problems. My elder brother has now got a daughter. Because I've gone through this education system, which is far from ideal for EMs. So I insisted on sending my niece to mainstream KG. When she started P1, we had a lot of problem finding the right school. Much of the information was in Chinese. We had to choose a Chinese school. We wanted her to learn Chinese, so we chose a mainstream Chinese school. We faced a lot of difficulties when she was in P1. The teachers were not sensitive. They felt that she was lazy. In fact, she was only 6-year-old, and she was being stereotyped. She was labeled as a girl who could not learn Chinese. She was doomed to be a failure. She was considered to be a failure. And she was asked to go to a EMI school, and then she would be happier because it was a Chinese community. It would be hard for her to learn Chinese. I understand that this is a Chinese community, we know. Still, there will always be minorities here. Well, my father came in 1965. EMs are always here, have always been here, and they are in every country. So the teachers said so because they were not sensitive. We are human beings. We want to learn, and teachers are supposed to teach us. We didn't want to go to another school. And then she was labeled to be a slow learner. We refused to leave. We insisted. There were too many problems. Well, so the problem with EMs starts with education. Well, even for For IV and vocational studies, if we know Chinese, we can learn better, set aside universities, and then we can be a better member of society. Ms. Halin from Health in Action. Thank you. As we were talking about poverty of EM, at the last meeting, we talked about education, and now we would like to talk about health in poverty alleviation, because health and poverty are interrelated. According to statistics, EM families tend to be bigger, whereas the proportion of family members working is low. So if the breadwinner is sick, then the family can easily fall below the poverty line. So it is important to ensure the health of EMs. I'd like to bring out 3 points. First, we have a representative from the LD. So I'd like to talk about the importance of data. The LD is interesting. When it comes to occupational diseases and death, they compile statistics for EM. For occupational fatalities, and they have a breakdown of Chinese and EMs. When it comes to accidents, they have not provided a similar breakdown. We hope that the LD can do this for us. For Pakistanis, we have about 17% of them engaged in high-risk jobs, such as in the construction and transport sectors. And if occupational diseases and injuries may not have accurately reflected the actual number of occupational injuries. Perhaps they have not reported their accidents and injuries. And we should do something to lower the risk for EMs with occupational diseases and injuries. Now, in our submission, we mentioned that according to a study, 60% of the EMs are not aware of pamphlets or information to prevent occupational injuries or diseases. So LD, when compiling such information, should consider outreaching activities with interpreters on site. And if an EM has contracted an occupational disease or suffer occupational injuries, they have to be properly rehabilitated before they can rejoin the workforce. According to studies, many EMs are ignorant about compensation. They might have been injured at work. They don't know how to claim compensation, and they're not aware of rehabilitation services such as OT, PT, and psychiatric services. Many of them do not know that interpretation services are available. Now, if an EM has suffered is injured at work, then I think there should be the need for interpretation service should be marked. I hope there can be interdepartmental referrals. Thank you.
Kapai Payandi, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The administration's recent efforts at seeking to understand poverty situation of ethnic minorities is most welcome. As the findings reveal, there are distinct issues which cut across ethnic groups and intra-ethnic communities as well. So the complexity of the issues that impact this group and the distinctions cannot be ignored. The administration's progress in disaggregating the data by these variables is an indicator that such a complex approach to solutions to poverty is also similarly required. Whilst the administration reports that recent poverty alleviation measures have helped mitigate the circumstances faced by ethnic minorities, the approach does not foreshadow any long-term plan to address the causative factors on a systemic basis to help prevent intergenerational poverty and entrenchment. The paper proposes that the lack of Chinese language skills poses the significant or the most significant barrier and link to poverty. However, the picture is far more complex than this. The lack of attention to specific causative factors for poverty among minority groups, suggests the inherent limitations to the extent of the success and the sustainability of existing poverty alleviation measures for this group. The data clearly reflects systemic and institutionalized discrimination against Hong Kong's ethnic minorities, which suggests that it's not simply a function of language exclusion in Hong Kong, but rather poverty is largely characterized by the color of one's skin and the absence of any rigorous implementation of equality rights under the Race Discrimination Ordinance. The figures are quite stark in the report, and I won't repeat them except to show that in every sphere of life, ethnic minorities underperform or are underrepresented, whether it is our levels of poverty compared with the overall population, or our representation in the workforce, the professions we occupy, our household incomes, and the gaps are particularly stark if you break it down further by gender and by age. So there are some circumstances which can explain some of these figures in the form of language exclusion, but these matters are further exacerbated by the environment that we have in Hong Kong, where there is now an increasing tendency towards exclusion and marginalization, given the societal rhetoric against ethnic minorities. The problem of child poverty is also very serious. 1/3 of ethnic minority children live in situations of poverty, and nearly a quarter of all youth aged 15 to 24 live in situations of poverty. The figures highlight precisely why we can't apply generalized policies for poverty eradication across the board. For a systemic problem, we need a creative solution. The first and most urgent approach is to conduct a comprehensive review to examine the causative factors so that we can track groups before they fall into situations of intergenerational poverty. This requires understanding the link between childhood and poverty trends. Other jurisdictions have studies about success sequences for different ethnic groups and what determines the at-risk factors for people ending up in situations of poverty. I also suggest a multidisciplinary task force begin conducting an impact assessment and evaluation of our legal and policy measures targeting ethnic minorities and to address the problem. I also recommend a high-level commission to look at ethnic minority affairs as a whole. This information needs to be made available to a single body who can comprehensively assess the impact from a macro perspective, not just the micro-level issues, because all of these issues are significantly interrelated. All the deputations point to the fact that there is significant discrimination prevalent across society in different spheres in Hong Kong. Language does not address these other prejudices. What does it say about Hong Kong if the degree of success you have depends on the color of your skin? We can't call ourselves Asia's world city. It's shameful to call ourselves that if these are our numbers in terms of how we let ethnic minorities down. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Biani. Could now invite Ms. Bushra Khalik, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Bushra, and I have been living in Hong Kong for more than 7 years. I have been working after that, and considering today's topic, poverty, I would like to focus on one of the reasons which is usually addressed. It is participation of women in the Hong Kong, and their limitation. They are not taking part in labor force. First of all, I want to emphasize that it is not the culture which is limiting EM women to work in Hong Kong. It is wholly their own preference. It could be because of their commitment with family and their children. And ladies, for their children, their school finish at 3:30, and most of the time it in the year, and sometime it finish at 12 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock, and sometimes other than public holidays, there are day offs, and it is not convenient for ladies to take up any employment when they are working full-time or part-time, when they have to take care of their children. And along with that, if we talk about the child care service centers which are provided by government after school services, and they are not available they are only available for limited parents, and private childcare service centers, they are very expensive. And when we talk about neighborhood childcare service centers, their timings are not convenient for the ladies who want to work, like their time starts from 9 o'clock, and which is the usual time for the employment, and finish around 6 to 5 or 6 p.m. So I would suggest that the time should be revised and more convenient to the working hours of the employment. And along with that, I want to discuss that here I want the information about childcare service centers. It is not available. Most of them, like I, being a single parent, I could only get this information because I'm educated. I explored it, and but other ladies I have encountered with, they really don't know about this information. And if they get this information, this may be in English, in Chinese. It's not available in English. And I would suggest to provide childcare service support to ladies who really want to work, and so it will encourage them to go out, and they are really satisfied with their children care. And one more thing that they should understand, that we should understand the women need, how they want to in which area they want to work, and how comfortable they can work in a certain environment, and according to that more vacancies can be opened. And like in childcare neighborhood service centers, they provide carers at home, and EM can participate in that employment opportunity. And more flexible hours job should be introduced for part-time worker, ladies who want to do part-time jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Khalik. We will now invite Mr. Mohammed Qadir.
Mr. Mohammed Qadir.
Assalamu alaikum. Shukriya. Thank you very much. मैं हांगकांग में तकरीबन 25 सालों से मैं हांगकांग में तकरीबन 25 सालों से रह रहा हूँ.
I am living in Hong Kong for more than 25 years.
मुझे थोड़ी बहुत चाइनीज़ और इंग्लिश वगैरह बिल्कुल नहीं आती.
I can speak little bit Chinese, but I cannot speak English at all.
मैं इतने अरसे में हांगकांग में अकेला रह रहा था.
I was living in Hong Kong alone.
क्योंकि यहाँ मेरे पास अच्छी नौकरी नहीं थी, इसलिए बीवी बच्चों को साथ रख नहीं सकता.
Because I didn't have a good job, so I was not able to take my wife and children to live with me.
मेरी तनख्वाह बहुत कम थी, अलग फ्लैट में अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकता था. कुछ साल पहले 2 नौकरियां करके मैंने बीवी बच्चों को यहाँ स्पॉन्सर किया.
My salary was very low, so I cannot afford a separate flat. And a few years back, I do 2 jobs to sponsor my wife and children.
मैंने अलग से घर लिया, लेकिन इनका किराया बहुत ज़्यादा था. बच्चों के पढ़ाने के लिए अखराजात कम थे. मेरे पास सिर्फ एक नौकरी और उसमें सारे खर्चे पूरे करना बहुत मुश्किल था.
I rented a house, a separate house, but its rent was too high, and I also have expenses for the studies of my children, and I had only 1 job, so it was very difficult for me to meet all these expenses.
मुझे गवर्नमेंट मुख्तलिफ इमदादों की स्कीमों के बिल्कुल मालूम नहीं था.
I didn't know, I didn't have any information about different assistance schemes by the government.
मैं वक़्त में कम्युनिटी के फैट जो माती स्टूडेंट किताबों की स्कीमें, लेबर डिपार्टमेंट किराए की स्कीमें थी.
I know that there was different community care fund, student financial assistance schemes, and work incentive transport subsidy from government department.
मगर मुझे ना तो ये मालूम था कि कहाँ जाता हूँ और कैसे वगैरह करने को खुद को ज़बान नहीं आती थी, इसलिए दूसरा बंदा मदद भी नहीं कर सकता.
Because I didn't have any information and I don't know where to go and from where to get the form, and because I have a language barrier, I cannot ask anyone to help me.
मुझे मजबूरन अपनी फैमिली को वापस पाकिस्तान भेजना पड़ा.
So I have to send my family back to Pakistan.
मैं बहुत सालों से इसी तरह कुछ साल मुझे कैंसर सेंटर के बारे में मालूम हुआ.
So after that I get to know about the Catholic Center.
इन सेंटर वालों ने मुझे लेबर डिपार्टमेंट के कुछ स्कीमें अप्लाई कर दी.
And these centers told me about different schemes from the Labor Department and they helped me to apply for them.
मुझे दूसरे स्कीमों के बारे में भी बताया, जैसा कि बच्चों की किताबों की स्कीम सेंटर वालों ने.
And this center also told me about different other schemes like a textbook assistance scheme for the children.
इस सेंटर ने मुझे सारी स्कीमें अप्लाई करके दी.
And this center helped me to apply for these schemes.
इनकी ज़्यादा मदद मिलने के बाद मैंने बच्चों को यहाँ अपने साथ रख लिया.
After getting help from this center, I take my children to live with me.
अभी गुजारा मुश्किल है, मगर उनकी इमदादी स्कीमों के मेरे जैसे लोगों की बहुत मदद मिल जाती.
Still, it is difficult to afford all this, but after getting help from these assistance schemes, it is better than before.
अगर हुकूमत हमारे जिस खानदानों की गुर्बत निकालना चाहती है तो इमदादी स्कीमों के लिए दरख्वास्त देने के लिए मदद करें.
If government want families like us to get rid of poverty, they should help us to apply for those assistance schemes.
और हर महकमे में तर्जुमानी की सहूलियत फराहम करके फार्म पर करने की मदद और उन सारी स्कीमों की सही प्रमोशन करें.
And government should provide interpretation service in all departments and form filling services and promote these schemes appropriately.
हांगकांग में नौकरी ढूंढना बहुत मुश्किल है. एक दफा नौकरी ढूंढने के लिए मैं लेबर डिपार्टमेंट गया.
To find a job in Hong Kong is very difficult. Once I went to the Labor Department to seek for a job.
वहाँ सारी नौकरी चाइनीज जबान में लगी हुई थी. मैंने टूटी फूटी जबान से चाइनीज से मैंने लेबर डिपार्टमेंट को उससे पूछा, ऑफिसर से.
All the jobs were advertised there in the Chinese language. So in broken Chinese, I communicate to the officer there and ask about the jobs.
वहाँ बात की तो मुझे नौकरी वाली मशीन के पास ले गया.
I talked to him and he take me to the machine showing the vacancies.
उसकी बातें मुझे समझ नहीं आती थी. मुझे एक नौकरी का प्रिंट करके दे दिया, जो मेरे दोस्त ने बाद में मुझे बताया कि ये एक ऑफिस की नौकरियां जिसमें कंप्यूटर वगैरह जरूरी है.
And he was not able to understand me, so he printed a job for me. And after that, my friend told me that this is an office job, and computer and Pothongwa is a requirement for this job.
हुकूमत अगर वाकई हमारी मदद करना चाहती है और गुर्बत ख़त्म करना चाहती है तो लेबर डिपार्टमेंट हमारे लिए मुंतखब करदा ट्यूशन बनाए.
If government really want to help us and want to alleviate the poverty, the Labor Department should make a specific division for us.
जो हमारे काबिलियत के हिसाब से नौकरियां ढूंढ कर दें.
Which provides jobs to us according to our qualifications.
इससे न सिर्फ कमी दूर होगी बल्कि अपनी सलाहियत के हिसाब से रोजगार भी मिलेगा.
It will not improve the workforce, but we will also get jobs according to our abilities.
और जिसकी वजह से हम माशी तौर पर मजबूत हो सकेंगे और अपने बच्चों को मुस्तकबिल दे सकेंगे. बहुत शुक्रिया.
And with this help, we will be economically better, and we will be able to give better future to our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Quadia. Thank you, Mr. Interpreter. 跟住我哋請何宏達先生，唔該。
We have Mr. Holman Tat. Chairman, I'm intern social worker, care about EM rights. So when discussing about the poverty situation of EMs, we cannot discuss this from the angle of the local Chinese residents. However, we should discuss it from the specific needs of EM. There's been a long history, a severe problem of poverty of EMs in Hong Kong. According to the poverty report of 2014, the poverty rate is about 38.3%, and the unemployment is 16.6%, with Pakistani being the most vulnerable group. About half of them are living under the poverty line. And the figures have shown that the severe poverty issues faced by EMs, they do need a lot of policy intervention and assistance. And the 2013, at the Poverty Commission, Ms. Carey Lam mentioned that the more effective anti-alleviation measures is employment. Thus, there will be a continued assistance in employment assistance, and yet we still see that EM face a lot of obstacles when seeking employment.
EM job seekers are subject to a lot of unfair treatment. For low-skilled works, employers will require EMs to be able to read and write Chinese. This is set a very high threshold for them. The language barrier is the biggest obstacle to employment for many EMs. Compared to their local counterparts, well, they may not be able to read or write Chinese, but because they are Chinese, employers tend not to be so demanding. But because EM's employers might put in more requirements. Just to quote a real case to substantiate my point, I once found a job from the LD as a security guard. There was no mention of skills or language requirements in the advertisement. But when I called the employer on behalf of a EM, when I made it clear that the candidate was EM, I was told by the EM that Chinese skills and computer skills were needed. I think that was really an obstacle to say no to the EM, and so that the EM, the employer, will not have to be held responsible. So we must face up to the discrimination faced by EM job seekers. So what the case I quoted was just the tip of the iceberg. So I wonder whether employment services have covered the needs of EMs. Therefore, LD should lobby employers to be more willing to employ EMs, and only job-related skills should be put in as a requirement, and then a branch under the LD to support EMs should be done. We'll extend the meeting to 5:15.
Considering this very important topic and the members of the administration who have attended today. Hong Kong should be proud of the disproportionate contributions to our economy, culture, sports, governance, and civil society made by ethnic minorities. We are Hong Kong's golden thread. The subcommittee will no doubt remember the role played by South Asian lawyers giving their lives in the defense of Hong Kong during World War II. It is a shame on our society that the descendants of those soldiers, despite our contributions, suffer disproportionate poverty today. Regrettably, the administration's paper does not address how to combat the root causes of poverty. In particular, the administration fails to acknowledge the problem of widespread discrimination. Discrimination keeps the doors of opportunity closed. It keeps us in poverty. The government must address the root of the problem, which is the pervasive portrayal of Hong Kong as a mono-ethnic city led by a majority with a transient foreigner community. If you want to know what it means, what is wrong with the situation, I just ask you to look around you. There are no ethnic minority legislators. There are no ethnic minority principal officials. There are no ethnic minority members of EXCO. There are no ethnic minority district councillors. Minorities are almost entirely unrepresented in government appointment boards. I asked the subcommittee to have a look to the left. How many ethnic minority representatives in the government are there today? What language have they chosen to speak to us today? I think that speaks for itself. It is no wonder that ethnic minorities are frequently referred to as foreigners, even though, like myself, they may have been born in Hong Kong, they may be 4 or 5 generations in Hong Kong, and we are never accepted as locals or natives. I ask you, how would you feel if every time you met a stranger, they asked you, where are you really from? We feel as though we are alienated and powerless to do anything about this problem because we are not represented. The government can fix this, though. Bureaus should be made accountable to monitor and report and increase ethnic minority representation. They should, when forming search committees for jobs, they should include ethnic minorities on those committees. They should be required to include ethnic minorities in candidate shortlists, and where this is not possible because no minorities are qualified, committees should be required to report and examine criteria and to improve access to opportunities for minorities to those criteria. Secondly, the government must take a more proactive approach to enforcing the problem of discriminatory treatment. I regularly receive and advise on complaints, for example, about estate agents and landlords openly demanding to know the race of proposed tenants, refusing to rent to ethnic minorities, or requiring higher rents and deposits from ethnic minorities. This is a gateway problem, but it demonstrates the reality. Regrettably, the relevant law enforcement divisions of the government are not properly empowered to do much about this. The Equal Opportunities Commission should be given greater investigative and enforcement powers. The Estate Agents Authority should be funded and authorized to combat discrimination by or assisted by estate agents. Housing discrimination based on race should become a criminal offense, and law enforcement should not focus on reacting to complaints, but should take an active role in engaging in undercover operations to expose these practices and properly enforce the law. I thank the subcommittee for its attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wah.
Thank you. Before we invite the administration to respond, I'd like to seek your agreement. I think we've overrun too much. We may have to extend our meeting by a further 15 minutes. I hope you will agree. Our administration, do you have anything to respond at this stage? Well, all right. We have heard another dozen or so representations. I think they are reflecting more or less similar problems on education, employment, support measures, and whether they are aware of the services being provided by the administration. Well, these are aspects frequently covered by the Poverty Commission. Your views will be considered. I'd like to respond to some comments mentioned by lady here. She said that she wanted to join the workforce, but there weren't enough childcare services. Yes, the Poverty Commission does care for the welfare of women, and we have started a consultancy to see whether government services can support the needs of women so that they can be income earners as well. We heard that some childcare services ended too early and they could not cater to the needs of working mothers. All right, we do provide after-school childcare services, and there are some childcare centers that provide longer hours of childcare. I hope they can suit the needs of some women. The consultancy is still in progress, and we'll see whether we can have measures to help. But I'd just like to mention this. because this point was referred to by a number of speakers. And as for education, may I refer to my colleague, and also employment benefits and support. Perhaps the colleague from LD can respond. Thank you. We thank the speakers for giving us so many suggestions. Starting from 2014-15, we had a framework for learning a second language in school. We will collect data, and then we'll see whether to ascertain the needs of non-Chinese speaking students. We understand that they have a diversity of needs, and we have adopted a multi-pronged approach. We hope that we can help them in the area of education by means of the framework. Some students will be able to use their results from GCSE to apply for a university place, and we hope senior secondary school students can learn English as an applied subject. And we are more flexible in dealing with such qualifications. We hope that we are helping the non-Chinese speaking students in this regard. Labor Department, provision of pamphlets to provide information on occupational health and safety and employment protection. We have prepared such pamphlets in EM languages, and we have physical pamphlets produced, and the information is also uploaded to our website. We have tried to be graphic in our presentation. And we also offer lunchtime talks at construction sites to educate workers on employment protection. And as for interpretation services, the LD takes the initiative to provide interpretation services to EM workers from January to May this year. All those EM job seekers at our employment centers will be informed of the availability of interpretation services, and we ask them to confirm in the pamphlet whether they need interpretation services. We have offered interpretation services to 1,000 odd job seekers, and 11 sessions of interpretation services were provided. How come some of them did not need interpretation services? According to the replies, 98.2% of them felt that they were able to communicate in either English or Chinese. And we've also got EM ambassadors. We have employment services ambassador and also 2 EM officers to help. Thank you. Time is indeed limited, but 3 members have indicated their intention to speak. Any more? All right, 3. Dr. Fernando Zhao. So each will have 3 minutes, okay? Dr. Fernando Zhao. Thank you. This is a very important subject. We're grateful to the deputations for their presence this afternoon. But there are a number of meetings ongoing, and the education panel is next door, so it's hard for us to cope. But time is so short, I can only ask brief questions. First, in appointing members to advisory bodies, I'd like to know whether there is any policy to ensure that a certain proportion of EMs are appointed so that they can be represented in different kinds of advisory bodies. And the Education Bureau just told us that education was very important. But Mrs. Pt2 just told us that her daughter was rejected by 2 best at KGs in our area. Her daughter was rejected because of her skin color. So this is blatant discrimination and unacceptable. And who should be held accountable? I'd like to know who should be held accountable. And I heard from Professor Pujakata that he did study with Zuden Foundation. The dropout rate among EMs were very high. For Nepalese is as high as 20% before secondary schools, and for students of SENs is as high as 57%. This is very appalling and certainly unacceptable. If education is really the main channel for people to get rid of poverty, we're grateful to the young people who are present today. The framework for teaching Chinese as a second language doesn't include any curriculum, any teaching materials or assessment. It is not helping at all. So I'd like to ask the EB whether there is anything to respond. And I also like the CS for A's office to take that question about appointment to ASBs. Ms. Yip. Thank you. Admission of EM kids to KGs. The Education Bureau has reminded KGs once again that at least the application forms must be bilingual. And in 2017-18, the quality-free KG scheme will be launched, and this must be strictly adhered to. But then, Chairman, even though an English form was given, or what if the KG refuses to give the parent an English application form? Perhaps a complaint has to be lodged with the EOC. For sure, we will accept such a complaint. It is unreasonable for a KG not to even accept the application form. The admission process must be fair and just.
The proportion system and the appointing the members of the consultative bodies, we need to look at the scope of work and when the backgrounds of the proposed members and the relevant experience or the considerations. As having a quota for EMs, we don't have such system in place. And because I'm familiar with the poverty alleviation work, we hope to hear more voices from EM. And every year, the poverty summit, we would deliberately include or make a difference. Even though a lot of people are interested, we actually reserve some spots for EMs to participate. And every year we do have a number of them and have spoken at the summit, and we would have follow-up on what they said at the summit and how to understand your aspirations. And in the latest policy on the policy platform, she especially mentioned as one of the points for EMs that in the consultative bodies we hope to include more EMs, and hope that inside the government our colleagues would follow along this direction. Can we have a EM representative at the Commission on Poverty? When we're making appointments, we would consider that. We just have another year on the Poverty Commission. After this term, of course, the Chief Secretary or our senior levels government, we would have a comprehensive consideration when making such appointments. First, I would like to thank with all the deputations. As Dr. Chung said, I'm sorry because at the same time we're having a few meetings going on, and during the first session we still have to deal with public complaints. I would like to ask the administration that from the document, today we've heard so many deputations, whether in first or second round. what they said is quite simple, that you feel they have done a lot, and yet the other side feel that you're not being helpful. Have you ever considered where did the mismatch stem from? So the government have devoted so much resources to school to admit EM students. However, the student, whether for the language acquisition and learning, still come across a lot of problems. So now the administration document mentioned that would have a survey on the satisfaction and awareness of public services. I don't think it's needed, and probably what the results will be similar to what we heard in the meeting, that EM's not aware of that. So why are they in poverty? Because they're not aware of the resources available offered by the government. You don't say that the education matters go to EDB and the labor go in the labor department. Who in the government would think, where do all this mismatch come from? So you have mismatch in every department. So where is the mismatch? So why do you think that you have done so much and yet the EMs think that they're not of help? So here's your son, Ms. Kwan. And this study that mentioned by Ms. Mack was actually done by the Commission on Poverty to look into this mismatch. All the services that we provided, we hope that the Hong Kong public, no matter their races, would use them where necessary. And now that we have all the services in place, and there seems to be a low tech aware and even not aware of it. So I would say the communication is important. So in this study, rather than using on internal analysis, this study is willing to collect opinions through focus groups that would invite the users, the EMs in this case, to tell us by different categories on different departments why the service didn't reach them. So what is the difficulty in using them? I hope that this study would not be take place for too long, or maybe I hope that the report will be released within this year. Sorry, I had to interrupt because sorry, I don't want to mean to overrun. You mentioned that the study because you're on behalf of the Commission on Poverty. So in the government departments, would that be the commission to look into where the mismatch is? Why is it to be handled by a higher level in the government? If it only rely on the COP to look at the mismatch, maybe you look at the poverty alleviation measures, how we talk about education, housing, even medical. So would the government consider creating to oversees the EM at a higher level? Or maybe we can EM Ms. Kwan will have another time to discuss this. So maybe the last 3 minutes to Ms. Mo.
Probably is in paragraph 16 of Professor Kapai's submission. It says here, current measures appear to be broad and too general. There you are. And as such, fail to tackle the needs of ethnic minorities living in poverty. Well, I would even say, you guys, well, not personally, but it's all very half-hearted. All your policies, all your measures, some of you genuinely try to help, but most would just take it as a job. I've done it. And I have to pity that Mr. Asan Marwa has left. I need to tell him, actually, that during my gatherings with ethnic minority groups, especially women's groups, I always tell them, you need at least one ethnic minority legislator in Hong Kong, at least one member in this council to be representative of the entire community. And most of the ladies would find this, they would shy away thinking it's some unthinkable, unrealistic suggestion. No, it's not, right? We are in the year of 2017. For God's sake. I need to ask the government, especially the representative, Ms. Kwan of the CS office. would you actually consider Professor Kapai's suggestion that, one, we need a thorough, comprehensive review of what's happened in Hong Kong about ethnic minority poverty. Two, that the government should set up a commission on ethnic minorities, please, right? And three, there's this attitude, mentality thing. Civil servants need to adopt a rights-based approach. That's so good. Rights-based approach. You're not doing charity. You're not doing welfare. It's rights we're talking about. 3 questions. Could you reply, please?
好啊，或者請政府代表回答之前呢，容許我，如果冇大家在座嘅委員冇反對嘅話呢，再延長多5分鐘時間，好嗎？等政府官員有充分嘅時間答翻呢3個問題。唔該啊，關女士。
Answer to 3 questions.
Need a comprehensive review on what we are doing? Yes, that's why we are here. And then we have a lot of analysis and review and policy research on all those issues relating to the EMs. And the poverty analysis is one of the bases, so we know what we are, the basis and the foundations we are at, and then what the problems they are facing and the social characteristics. These are the basics that we need to have in order to formulate or think about the future strategies we need. On the second question on whether we need a high-level commission, this is really not in my position to answer, but I will, bring all those comments back to the administration for, consideration in a higher level. And on the third, right-based approach for our public service delivery, definitely yes. We are not doing welfare, as you said. We are doing our job. So that's why we are here, and we want to know what our services will do to us, to the recipients, and what are the areas that we can focus in order to improve them, in order to have a better access to them. So this is all our objective to be here. Thank you very much.
Before
I wrap up the meeting, just let me conclude. We'd like to thank the deputations present and the support of the members. We're able to extend the term of the meeting another 12 months to have more time to introduce more agenda items. Because we've concluded, we hope that hopefully we'll arrange another meeting in October, and if no, without opposition, we'll consult the members on the agenda items. And hopefully we would invite the secretaries to offer more previews on the EM policy. If no other business, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for the administration representatives.